What's up guys, it's your boy Fairy Tiger here. We finally hit 100 subs on the channel, and I'd like to say a big thank you for all the subscribers who made that possible. As promised, I'm here with a video containing my full button layout. Alright, so before we get into this video, I'd like you all to know that this button setup would really change how you play the game. It will give you all the advantages like the PC guys have. You have all the mappings just like the PC guy, and I do this with the PS4 controller mostly. I also play claw, so certain buttons are much more easier for me to reach, but I have friends who use the same button layout which works perfect for them as well, so you don't need to worry about that. The only kicker here is that the Xbox controller users may have some few buttons out, but don't worry, you can make up for it by mapping buttons to those keys as well, so don't worry about that. So let's get into the mappings. Alright, so for my sensitivity, that's the main, yeah. This is the full sensitivity that I use. Generally I play on high sense in every game I play, in Apex, Call of Duty, Fortnite, any shooter game I play, Titanfall, I play on high sense. So maybe yours may be low, but you could turn it up. I always advise to play on high sense, but you could turn it up gradually so you get used to it. So for my controller aiming speed, I use a 1.6 aiming mode sensitivity multiplier. That's when your ADS, I use a 0.5. This should always be low to keep it steady, unless the you can always catch up with the fast aim on the hipfire, and then you stable it by using the ADS. So mine is on 0.5, and third person view mode sensitivity multiplier is on 2.3. First person view mode sensitivity multiplier is on 2.15. Left stick dead zone 10%. I always keep this low no matter what game I play. Right stick dead zone even lower, 5%. Aim assist definitely on. This doesn't matter, you can keep it on or off. Aim acceleration, this is the bread and butter of the aiming in this game, because in other games, right, in order for you to have this snappy feel, you need to tune that down. In other games they have it set by default, but coming from fast-paced games like Apex, which have it low, which is very advantageous if you'd ask me, it's really good. So you have to turn it down always. You always have to turn it down. I'm sure yours could be on 2 or even 1, but turn it down gradually to 0.15, 0.20. Turn it down like till you get to 0.1, which I think is the sweet spot for it to be in, and then you tune that up by turning up your sensitivity also. Alright, let's go to movement. For movement, I have my crawl on hold, circle hold. But before we get into that, in this game it has a very robust mapping system. You could change how the buttons work when you press them. So with the button setup, you could set it on press, on hold, on double tap, on triple tap, on release, on fast press, and on release after hold. And there's a big difference between only 2 of these. So with the on press, it takes up the fast press and the hold. So if you have a button to on press, you can't set it to another one on hold. So if you want to set it to another button on hold, you need to keep it on fast press. So you need the same button on fast press if you want to set the same button on hold for another. Alright, now that that's clear, let's move on. Alright, so for crouch, I use circle hold, which should be default. Crouch, circle, fast press, jump X, movement L, analog, sprint, L3 on fast press, because I'm going to use the L3 for another button in this game, so I can't just leave it on press. Vehicle throttle R2, vehicle brake or reverse L2, vehicle steer L, and this is for the drifting. So I have it set up to modify L1 and axis, left analog stick, left and right, dead zone 0, non-linearity 0, invert axis, none. Remember, sometimes when you do set it like this, especially with a modifier type of setup, it might take out the L1, it might take up the modifier, so then later come back into it and then remap the modifier again, then you're good. Alright, let's go to weapons. Aiming, for this aiming, I don't really know what it's used for. The first one, it feels like a cross between ADS and hipfire, which is very weird. It puts the weapon in a very weird perspective, so I have it turned off because I never use it. And for aiming, that's a regular aiming you all are used to. That's L2. Firing mode, I have it set to L1 on double tap. So anytime I double tap L1, it switches my fire mode on specific guns only. Next, grenade type, R1 double tap. That's to cycle through my grenades. Breath holding, I don't like it on L3 because on L3 I use L3 to move when I'm aiming. So sometimes when I'm holding breath and you move, it takes you out of the ADS, which you don't want. So that you need to set it to another button, and preferably mine is on L1. And for melee, it's L1 plus R3 because I use R3 for something else. I needed another button to work in place for that, so I combine two buttons. Remember, in this setup, in my setup, L1 is going to play a big role. So in order for you to set two buttons to work, this is how you do it. You go into it, you hold the first button, right, and then you press the second button and hold it. So you hold the first button, hold the second button, whilst your hand is simultaneously on two of these buttons. Release the second button. I repeat, release the second button when your hand is still on the first button. So let's say mine is on L1 and R3. So L1, I hold L1, I click and hold R3 whilst my hand is still on L1. So I have two buttons pressed in, and then I release R3 whilst my hand is still on L1. Then you can map it. Yeah, so now that that's out of the way, let's move on. You're going to map a lot of combined keys for it to work in my mappings. So let's go. Gun reload, square. Remember, it should be square only because you don't want it on hold because sometimes it takes a while and you need it to be snappy. Alright, shooting is R2. These two I don't really use them, so let's move on. Grenade, R1 on hold. So you hold R1 to throw a grenade and then you double tap R1 to switch in between grenades. Weapon 3, it's on left D-pad. Weapon 4, that's your melee weapon, is on triangle hold. I came from Apex, so I really like that kind of button setup and I just transferred it onto this game. So next main weapon, triangle fast press. Remember, you don't need to map your next weapon as well because in this game your weapons don't cycle through. If you double tap it fast enough, your weapons won't cycle through. It will just take you directly to your second weapon, so you don't need it. You don't need to map the next main weapon to another button. Zoom is L2. Alright, let me demonstrate the weapon switching for those that may be a little bit confused. Alright, so I picked up two weapons right now. Regularly, you press triangle to bring out the first weapon. Let's say you have your melee weapon, right? You press triangle to bring out your first weapon. In other games like Apex and Call of Duty, you press triangle again to switch between the weapons for that to switch. But if you're on your first weapon in this game, let's say you're on your melee weapon, you can instantly switch to your second weapon by double tapping triangle. It won't cycle through like this, like the way other games does, like in Fortnite. It won't do that. It will take you directly to your second weapon. So that's great. Alright, let's move on. Okay, here's where it gets even more interesting. Aiming, that should be left. It's already set on R. Toggle view. This is where you switch between your first and third person mode. So I set that on touchpad. That should be set on touchpad. Press the touchpad, and that should be on fast press. And leaning is another highly requested feature by my sub. So with leaning, I don't have it set to that weird automatic thing that a lot of players have it on. It's very inconsistent and really messes up your aim. It will take a very long time for you to get used to that, and even with that, in certain situations it might be a detriment to you. So I have it set on R3 and then R3 for the modifiers and L for the axis. extra dead zone 0%, non-linearity 1, invert axis 0. Let me show you what I mean. This is what a lot of people have it on. Without the R3, it makes it like, so anytime you move left and right, it's leaning, which is very inconsistent. Let's say you're aiming someone, this is what it does. And you don't want to be doing this in a gunfight, especially against somebody whose aim is steady. If someone's aim is steady and you're doing that, if the person has a better aim than you or an equal aim as yours, you doing this, you'll be at a detriment. You may think it's making you harder to, which may be true. But if I have a steady aim, I'm definitely going to laser you whilst you're doing this. So this is why I have it. I have my modifier set on R3. So with R3, I can easily control it. When I hold R3 and I move the left analog stick in a direction, it leans. And if I want it to stay that way, whilst I'm holding R3 and giving that direction, I release R3 while still giving the direction, and I'm stuck in it. So you hold R3 to initiate it, and then you move in that direction, right? And you release the R3. So in that direction, you be leaning, and to reset it, you just click R3 again. With this, if you want to set it quick and you don't want to be moving like this, you need to not move the left analog stick as much. Just move it slightly like this, and then you release the R3. The minute it gets there, release the R3, but then keep your hand in that slight movement on the L. So then you release the R3, and then that's done. I do this a lot in the battles as well. So with practice, you can get used to it, and that's how you lean in this game. That's the best way to lean in this game, in my opinion. Alright, let's move on. With viewing, this allows you to look, I think, give yourself about 200 degrees angle for looking around. In other games, you can't do that. In other games, you only have this angle, this 180 view angle to look. But with the viewing, you can look around like this whilst your player is focusing somewhere else. You can look around just to check out your flanks. And I set this with touchpad as modifiers and the axis as R. So with the axis, you move the R in a clockwise direction, and it should map that. The sensitivity of it matches my sensitivity of my third person view mode, so that's 2.4. Extra dead zone 0. Non-linearity is 1. Snap factor 0. Don't map these two. Alright. So it's a great way to check your flanks when you're playing. I usually do this in solos, but because I split my videos a lot, I need to keep my videos short. You don't see this when I'm playing. I use this to always keep an eye on my flanks when I'm playing, especially in large fields like this, because you may never know who may be on a turret over here. If you're trying to get to this point, you can use that to check. Alright, so that's a good thing to have. Let's move on. Switch boombox on and off, and switch boombox radio station. It's optional in my opinion, but I like to keep it on because I own the boombox and I use it to juke people when I play. It really works, believe me or not. The boombox can be a huge distraction. Use it to mark your footsteps. It does a lot, so you can map them to benefit you if you use them, if you have them, that is. So with the switch boombox radio on, I have it set to L3 on hold, and with the switch boombox radio station, it's L1 plus L3. So L3 is the same button I use to sprint, remember, right? So I can sprint right and hold L3. It won't stop the sprinting. It will trigger the boombox or trigger it on or off, but it won't stop the sprinting. The only thing that may stop the sprinting is when you switch with the L3 plus L1, the L1 plus L3. That would stop your sprinting, like you can see, because I'm switching in between. I'm clicking it once and that matches the sprint button, so it will definitely stop your sprinting. But don't worry, if you need it for noise, you just need to turn it on and off. And also with another button setup that's coming up, you may not need to be switching it on the fly like this to interrupt your sprinting. Alright, let's move on. Take wheel X on hold, that should be a given. Recover, circle, all this is not needed. Change seats in vehicle X fast press. Use square fast press, very necessary, should be on fast press. Now for the part that most of you have been waiting for, this is my usability. I set it to L1 plus R1. So it also matches. If you play Apex, you know that that's where the familiarity comes from. I'm an Apex player, so I came to this game and it was kind of weird. I needed to feel the transition to be smoother, so it's on L1 plus R1. And then the draw sign, this is what I have it on. For my draw sign 1, L1 plus triangle, draw sign 2, L1 plus square, draw sign 3, L1 plus circle. The only how do you call it, problems you may have with these, but they are not problems anymore because I've mastered how to use them. With the triangle, remember triangle is your switch weapon, and in this game when you map two buttons, it conflicts with the individual buttons that have been mapped. So anytime I use L1 plus triangle, it will immediately bring out my weapon. So if you don't want that to happen and you're in melee mode, you just hold the triangle. So you see, this way I'm still on my melee weapon and I don't have my primary weapon brought out. But I kind of realized it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because usually I set the thing and then have to switch to the weapon, but now the minute I set it, it brings out the weapon. So with practice you get used to it. So I bring it out and then I can immediately shoot. So L1 plus triangle is perfect for me. And also with L1 plus square in practice mode, I don't know whether it's because my ping is a little bit higher natively, but if you have a lower ping, it should be clearing your trap if you have it on L1 plus square, because remember, square is the same button you used to clear a trap. So as you can see here, the trap has been cleared but it still worked. So it's kind of good, and it's kind of bad if you don't know how to use it. So let's say you set it too far, that would be an issue, but if you set it really close, or trigger and you can still use it, and that would be good for escaping from people who are following you, because if you set this and people who are following you can use it too as well. So with this it's good. But if you don't want any of this to happen, you can do this by holding square when you press it. So when you hold square, regardless of the distance, it won't clean it. But if you tap square whilst you hold L1, it will clear it. Remember, tapping square will clear it and then holding square will keep it on. Alright, so now that's all cleared up. Let's move on. And with my third draw sign is on L1 plus circle. That also conflicts with crouching. But remember, when you're running, right, and you set it, it won't crouch. As you can see, she didn't crouch. But if you're walking and you set it, she's definitely going to crouch. Right now the ritual is on, so it's just to show you how it works when you're walking. But if you're running, it won't crouch. Alright, let's move on. Pick up and replace square on hold, pick up square on fast press. Medkit, this is also another thing. Bro, if you've already played this game for a while, this may be a lot of things to take in back. I promise you, bro, I promise you, this would help you a lot. It will change your gameplay a lot if you get used to it. Medkit is on directional button up, fast press. Remember, again, I came from Apex, I needed it to transition smooth. So directional button up on fast press for medkit, and then L3 for on hold for horn. Just L3, yeah, just L3 for horn. Okay. Map. Oh my god, I can already hear some people screaming. Oh my god, bro, what are these keys? Bro, trust me, if you're new, bro, this is definitely going to help you out. But if you're old, maybe you may have to change a few things here and there if it's too much of a change for you. But if you want to go the hardcore route, change everything, you need to stay in practice for about half a day to get used to it, depending on you, I think. So for map, it's on right D-pad on hold. So when you hold the right D-pad, it brings up the map. When you hold it and let it go, the minute it pops up, it will keep it on. But if you hold it whilst it's still on, it will keep it on for the duration of the hold. So remember, you hold, if you want to keep it on, you hold it. When the minute it pops up, you leave it. And if you want to keep it on for the duration of the hold, you just keep holding it, then you let go when you're done with it. Alright, controls again. Game menu, options on hold, that's default. Inventory, options, fast press, that's the default. Show pie menu, This is what shows your menu for your traps and your boombox and whatnot. That's on down for me because it's much easier to reach down than using the directional button up. I play on claw, but I still prefer it to be on down. So this should be an improvement to those who use it, who have it set to up D-pad, that is. Alright, so that one is set to down. Hint item for teammates. Alright, I can already hear some people screaming. Alright, that's also L1 plus right D-pad. Remember, you tap it, you don't hold it. If you hold it, it brings up the menu. So right D-pad, L1 plus right D-pad. And then mark enemies, L2 plus right D-pad. That's already a given, I think. Alright. And finally, boombox menu is on L1 plus down D-pad. This is an option I have that allows me to drop the boombox. I use it primarily for dropping boombox, but if you don't want the boombox set to the buttons I have, you could just use this menu all the time. It's more convenient. Like I said earlier, you don't need to have the switch boombox and the turn on boombox on when you have this button on. So L1 plus down would immediately bring this menu instead of using the pie menu to go to it. So remember, L1 plus down and you have your boombox menu. Alright, so that's about it. This is already set to default, and that's about it for my button setup. Remember, let me remind you how to, in case you have problems mapping two buttons, remember, you hold your first button, hold the second button too as well, release the second button whilst your hand is still on the first button, and that's how you map two buttons in this game. Alright, I forgot to add this in order for the simultaneous keys to work. I forgot to add this in order for the simultaneous keys to work, you need to hold the first button and then tap or hold the second button. You can't just press the two of them at the same time. That is a bit inconsistent. But if you want it to work 100% of the time, you must hold the first button and tap or hold the second button. So for the traps, I hold L1 and then tap any of them for the ability to work. So for the mystic signs, that's it. And for the main ability, to the same thing. I can even combine them. I hold L1, tap triangle, and then press R1 while the hand is still on the L1. So you get it. I can use two things at the same time. So far as your hand is on the first button, the first button in the simultaneous key is held, it will always work. So it may work when you press both at the same time, but remember, for it to work 100% of the time, the first button must always come first. It must always be held in first. Alright, so that's it for the video. I hope these settings improve your gameplay as much as it did to mine, because these settings definitely got me to top 10 diamond. If you did enjoy the video, please do leave a like and subscribe on the channel if you haven't already. More tutorials to come soon. Alright, peace.